Hello and good morning friends, welcome to the CEC EduSet live lecture. Dear friends, as you know that since previous sessions we are talking on personality theories and we have conducted sessions on the personality theories. We believe that the lectures would appear to be very beneficial to you. So taking the series forward on personality theory, today we would be talking on the two approaches. One is the humanistic approach, whereas in the second half we would be discussing on phenomenological approach. And for discussion on the two approaches, we have once again with us in our studios Dr. Parveen Sharma. Dr. Parveen Sharma is an associate professor in Hindu College of Education. Dr. Sharma has almost 30 years of experience. She has authored numerous books. Number of articles are published in reputed journals at national and international level. Number of students are pursuing their PhD under her able guidance. So let's welcome our guest, Dr. Parveen Sharma, and let's try to grab maximum knowledge through her experience. Hello ma'am, welcome to EduSet lecture.
Thank you, Geetika ji. Good morning viewers and listeners. In this session, we will be talking about humanistic approach to understand personality. As in this series earlier, we had been discussing the personality theories given by the great psychologists Freud, Adler, Jung, Cattell, Eysenck and Allport, the trait theories and the type theories. And further in this series, today we will be talking about the humanistic approach to understand personality. Well friends, as the ultimate aim of the whole process of the education is to develop the all-round personality of the children. So, what is that which makes the personality, and what do we mean by actually personality, how it can be assessed? We will be talking on later about the assessment. So today we will try to know who are the psychologists who come under this area, who have developed and propounded the theory in this area of humanistic approach, and how they understood the personality, what they wanted to contribute to the aspect of education. In this area of this humanistic approach, the great psychologist Abraham Maslow comes. He wanted to stress that the personality is not determined by the biological aspects inherent in human being. Rather, he was focusing on the other aspect, that there is enough goodness in the human being which later on one can develop, and on the basis of this goodness and positive behavior, positive nature which is inherent in the human being, the personality can be developed. Let us see. This approach to personality came from a group of psychologists subscribing to the humanistic school of psychology. Humanistic psychology, the so-called third force in psychology, and the other two being behaviorism and psychoanalysis, reflects a humanistic trend in dealing with and understanding human behavior. It believes in the goodness of men and reposes optimistic confidence in man's positive nature. Contrary to the unconscious of psychoanalytical psychology, here a person's conscious forms the basic structure of his or her personality. Earlier to this, some of the psychologists tried to explain the personality of an individual on the basis of unconscious, what was lying there hidden in the unconscious mind of the individual. But in this humanistic approach, Abraham Maslow wanted to say that it is the goodness of the individual. The approach adopted by the humanist that does not assume that personality is governed by biological forces from within, or that destructive drive are inherent in human beings, but instead points out that every one of us has the potential for self-actualization through spontaneity, creativity and personal growth. A number of theories such as those of Rogers and Maslow subscribe to the approach advocated by humanistic psychology. Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers were highly humanistic thinkers. See, this is the pic of Abraham Maslow. Self-actualization theory of Maslow. Let us understand, friends, what he wanted to say through this approach. According to his theory, human beings are basically good or neutral rather than evil. So first thing is clear, all the time when we say that there is the evil or devil nature in human being, he was opposed to this theory, this idea. He always wanted to stress that there is basically good nature in human being. There lies in everyone an impulse craving towards growth or the fulfillment of one's potentials. The goal is to seek self-actualization that usually comes from pursuit of knowledge, appreciation of beauty, playfulness, self-sufficiency, insight into the truth or other constructive and creative expression. The behavior or personality of a human being thus depends upon the style of striving towards the ultimate goal of self-actualization. Well, Maslow wanted to say that there are the different needs at lower level, like fulfilling the biological needs or needs of survival or sociological needs. But he wanted to say and he proved that after fulfilling these biological needs, the ultimate aim of an individual is to realize self-actualization need, and everyone is having potential for fulfilling that self-actualization need within himself or herself, but that depends what style of life, what style of attitude an individual is adopting or choosing to fulfill that need. There are the various ways and depends on the choices or the selection of an individual what kind of style he or she chooses to fulfill that need. According to this theory, however, the path leading towards the ultimate goal may have sub-goals in the form of satisfaction of the lower order needs. In this way, Maslow's theory of self-actualization suggests a hierarchy of needs for when references may be made to psychology of motivation. Like the pattern of human behavior is always governed by the satisfaction of our needs. As lower level need, first any individual tries to fulfill the biological needs, then safety needs, then self-esteem needs, and after that at the last level, when all these lower level needs are fulfilled, one tries to fulfill the self-actualization needs, and everyone is having the potential within an individual to fulfill that self-actualization need. We have to satisfy our biological needs for our survival and for our social and psychological needs. We have to strive for the satisfaction in the socio-psychological context. The satisfaction of these needs is, however, not the end of man's pursuit for the excellence. See, I want to explain it. We have the other needs of self-esteem needs or the survival needs for food, shelter and self-respect. But above all, we are born on this earth not to fulfill this lower level needs. Rather, one has to realize and realizing that potential which is lying within the individual, for what I am born, for what purpose I have come on this earth. So what is my ultimate goal? To realize the self-actualization need. This is what we talk about values, value inculcation. These values are characteristics of a self-actualized person to which one's efforts are directed in terms of the development have been enumerated, and these characteristics have been arrived at by Maslow by study of selected group of 38 persons. Abraham Maslow, what he did, he selected a sample of 38 eminent persons, and on the basis of case study of these persons, he tried to establish the characteristics which are being possessed by the self-actualized persons. And in this sample, the great persons, Abraham Lincoln, Roosevelt and the other great persons were included in this sample. And moreover, he selected his own professors and the other eminent persons. So by studying the Roosevelt and Lincoln like great eminent persons, he tried to establish that there are some characteristics which are found in the self-actualized person. So let us see what are those characteristics. First, ability to perceive reality, meaning by when a person we consider that this is the self-actualized person, will be having ability to perceive reality, willingness to accept reality, naturalness and spontaneity, and ability to focus on problems rather than themselves, need for privacy, then self-sufficiency and independence, and capacity for appreciation and ability to attain transcendence, identification with humankind and shared social bonds with other people. They may have few friends but have deep relationship with at least some of these friends. A democratic egalitarianism attitude and strongly held values and a clear distinction between means and ends, tolerant and sense of humor, inventiveness and creativity with the ability to see things in new ways, resistance to conform or succumb to social progress, and ability to go beyond dichotomies and bring together happiness. So these were 16 characteristics which were established by Maslow, that when we try to consider whether a person is having the capacity for self-actualization is not, these are the characteristics on the parameters of these characteristics we can assess a person, because these were the characteristics which he tried to collect and establish on the basis of the study of eminent persons like Lincoln, Roosevelt and his other professors and the other eminent persons of the society. These are really beneficial. Goal for personality development according to Maslow is self-actualization. Man is not born, according to him, to just enjoy the life, to have food, to have shelter. Rather, one has to realize the potentials which are lying within the himself or herself, for what I am born, how I can realize the self-actualization stage, how can I reach, and that depends what style of life one chooses or one adopts to reach that ultimate goal, and that selection or that choice of that style of life which one chooses to reach that ultimate goal makes his or her personality. This theory thus presents a very bright picture of human behavior and personality by setting an ultimate goal of self-actualization. However, it is criticized not being objective and scientific in its approach, especially in view of its subjective criteria for self-actualization, because right now I am saying that Maslow has said that it depends on the selection of any individual, what style of life one chooses to reach that goal. So it means the contemporary psychologists have criticized Maslow that the approach is not objective and scientific and approach is subjective. Let us proceed further on the phenomenological approach to personality. That is, first we will see what are the common characteristics after the humanistic approach. If we discuss what is phenomenological approach, we will see that there are some common characteristics which are found in phenomenological approach. They emphasize the importance of subjective experiences of person, because the personality of any individual is make a mark by the experiences or the interaction which he or she does in the society. So subjective experiences of person really matters in the development of the personality. Moreover, they also emphasize the importance of perception, organization and structuring of experiences. Perception of the experience is really very important in anyone's life. It depends on our attitude, how we perceive the things. You know, when in the counseling session or in guiding the students, we really talk about it's our perception, how we take the things. Suppose a teacher is asking the students, hey students, why you are not devoting your proper time towards your studies. So it depends on the perception of the experiences of the students, whether they see that the teacher is unnecessarily bothering us, or they perceive it that oh, how great the teacher is, he or she is really concerned about our studies. So it is our perception. So our perception is very important in how we organize and structure our experience. experiences, because the structural experiences are the essential determinant of our human behavior. Basically, the psychologists under this area, they were trying to establish that how the personality is determined. So these are our experiences, and they lay more emphasis on the self concept in development of personality, because after the perception of the experiences and after interaction in the society with the stakeholders, with the teachers, with the peer group, with the parents and other persons whom we come across in the day-to-day life is really important. So what concept of ourself we have made, that is the important. Later on I will be talking about this self concept learning theory. They emphasize the importance of present experiences, as some of the psychologists in other approaches were all the time talking about the past experiences, that these are our past experiences. These are, as Freud also said, these are our childhood experiences which make our personality, and ignore the present experiences. But the psychologists who have approached the way of seeing the personality by phenomenological approach, they say that our present experiences are also very important. In this area, we will be talking about Carl Rogers' self-theory of personality, because see the picture of Carl Rogers, a great psychologist. Carl Ransom Rogers, an American psychologist, in 1947 propounded a new theory of personality called self-theory, quite distinct from the earlier theories of personality. He stressed the importance of individual's self for determining the process of his growth, development and appropriate adjustment to his environment. See, Carl Rogers was slightly different from his contemporary and his predecessors, where the predecessors like Freud, Adler, Jung, they were of the viewpoint that our past experiences are very important, and just contrary to them, Carl Rogers was of the viewpoint that our present experiences are very important, because how we perceive the things, and after perceiving the things, what style we adopt to make the adjustment to the environment is really important. If there is a person who doesn't make the adjustment to the environment, will remain frustrated and will not be happy, and a frustrated person cannot spread the happiness, cannot bring the welfare of the individual and welfare of the society and welfare of the nation also. So one has to make adjustment, and one has to remain happy in this process of adjustment. So this is very important, what style of adjustment one adopts. So these are our subjective experiences. There are two basic systems underlying this personality theory, the organism and the self. Rogers considers them as systems operating in one's phenomenological area. What do we mean by organism? The organism is an individual's entire frame of reference. It represents the totality of his experience, both conscious and unconscious. He doesn't ignore the unconscious level and do not count much all the time the experiences of the conscious. He opines that our conscious as well as unconscious experiences, when they combine, this makes our entire frame of reference. And the second system, the self, is the accepted aware part of experience. The self as a system of one's phenomenal field can perhaps be best understood in terms of our concept of I, me and myself. See, if we do not talk about ourself, me and myself, then if one is not aware about the conscious or unconscious aspect of individually himself or herself, then when one is not aware what is my lifestyle and what I want, what are my potentials and how to utilize those potentials to reach the ultimate truth, reach the ultimate goal of life, then how can we expect from such a person to make welfare of the society or welfare of the nation? So it is essential that one has to give due importance to the self concept or the self ideas like me, my, I and myself. Personality is the product of interaction between one's phenomenological field. The acquisition of the concept of self is a long and continuous process. Human beings have inherited the tendency to develop their self in the process of interpersonal and social experiences which they acquire in the environment. The personality of an individual does not take shape in the vacuum, rather one has to move in the society, and these are the pressures of the society on the individual, or whether the individual is effective or influential enough to influence the society, that depends, but the interaction between the individual and the society matters much. So these are the social experiences of the individual which he or she gains in the interactive process in the form of our natural impulses. So this interaction of total range of experiences is enough to form the concept of ourself, because the idea to know is basically how the concept of self is taking shape, because after taking the shape of this self idea, one is able to make the personality of his or her. Roger does not advance a set of specific stages in the development of personality as proposed by Freud. He is somewhat different to the Freud, as Freud had given the different stages. Rather, Roger advocates continuity of growth in terms of a continuous evolution in the concept of self. See, when I talk about the evolution of the self given by Roger, means day to day the changes are coming in the personality or in the experiences of the individual. Today we learn something, tomorrow the experiences may change, the persons to whom with we interact in the society may change, our idea of self and our idea of the other person may change, maybe in a positive only, not in a negative, but this change which we get and after interacting with the people in the society day to day. So Roger wanted to say, on the basis of this interaction or the experiences in the society when one moves, so these changes they bring the changes in the concept of the self. Once a concept of self is formed, the individual strives to maintain it by regulating its values. See what he wanted to say: once an individual establish an image of his or her, then tries to maintain those values. Suppose one believes that I myself is known by an honest person in the society, or a person of principles, or a principle of values. This idea of self is established, and that individual particularly knows about himself or herself that people know me by my principles. So what will happen? After knowing this concept of self, one will try to maintain those values. So this is very important, that one comes to know how I am known in the society, what is my image. So that image is to be maintained by the individual. That makes the personality of individual. What is consistent with the individual self is really accepted and maintained at the conscious level, while which threatens image may be totally ignored or buried deep in the unconscious. So with this idea at this level also, I want to convey this message to the individual, to the stakeholders, to the parents and the teachers, that everyone has to help the child in maintaining the image of the child, and the individual as a child himself at his own level or her own level has to try to maintain his or her own good image or self in the society, because after establishing that good image, one will try to maintain that image. How visionary was Rogers while giving long back this concept. Sometimes people develop false self-image so strongly that even indisputable reality is denied, which lead an individual to abnormal behavior. Similarly, the unreasonable and unattainable are too different from one's real self, may result in maladjustment and serious personality disorders. See, friends, what happens when one one tries to establish image. Sometimes what happens, one do not realize that what is my real potential and tries to establish a false image in the society, and is not, because suppose says that I am a person of principles, that and that is a wrong or false image, and is not able to maintain that image. So what will happen, is not able to maintain that image, or one person feels that I should be respected in the society and people are not giving that due respect to that individual. What will happen, the person will come into a frustrated state, and the person may start behaving in an abnormal manner, and here starts the maladjustment of the individual and serious personality disorder comes. So when one is trying to establish a self image, one has to be conscious what is the real. So if one is not establishing the self image in reality and tries to maintain the false image, then maladjustment will come, and one will not be able to make adjustment in the society, and abnormal behavior and the disorder in the personality will come. That will again be a problem for the individual and for society as a whole. The union and harmony is important between the image of the self and the organism, that is the experience or the situation one meets in life is must, as the adjustment, happiness, growth and development all depend on it. According to Rogers, a person normally possesses considerable capacity for growth and the realization of his individual potential, and thus tries to advance continuously towards the development of his self and his real self experiences, resulting in feelings of self integrity, self fulfillment and a satisfying sense of psychological growth. See, union and harmony is really important, because if there is no union and there is no harmony, then the maladjustment will come. So that kind of harmony is important, and the development, however, runs into trouble when the self fails for some reason to incorporate and learns to live with its own new thoughts, feelings or behavior. The goal of a therapist, as Rosa advocates in his therapy, in such cases lies in bringing the individual in a unified way from what he or she is not or what he or she is really. So, some conditions to achieve self-actualization is: person must be respected and loved by others, person must respect and have faith in himself and his ability to achieve his goal, choices to the individual must be clearly perceived, and if the person is unaware of the choices, self-growth is hindered. Choices must be clearly symbolized. The person must not only be aware of alternatives, but he must also have clear-cut descriptions and full understanding of choices. So, well, dear friends, we have discussed humanistic approach to understand personality and Carl Rogers' phenomenological approach to understand personality. I believe that these two approaches to understand personality will be really helpful to the individual and for our counselors, parents and teachers, how to help the individual, how to help the child to make his or her personality, and the very idea behind humanistic approach is that there lies a goodness in the individual and they believed in the positive nature of human being, and Rogers in phenomenological approach believed in the good self image of the individual. I hope it is enough to understand the two theories of the personality, and I believe that it will be really helpful for the learners to understand the personality in the reference of this humanistic approach and phenomenological approach. Thank you. Good afternoon, listeners and viewers. In this session, we will be talking about learning theories of personality and social learning theories of personality. As we are discussing the various personality theories in this series. Further, we talk about the learning theory of personality. There are the various psychologists in this area like Pavlov, Watson, Guthrie, Thorndike, Skinner, Dollard and Miller, and Bandura and Walters, who are the well-known psychologists in this area. The various great psychologists have tried to understand personality by adopting the different approaches. Everyone wanted to establish the idea how one can understand the personality and what are the approaches can be utilized for understanding the personality of the individual, because in our whole process of education, we focus on how to make the personality of the individual. So, we have to see what are the learning theory of personality. In this area, importance of learning and objectivity to understand personality is great. In the beginning, we will talk about the learning theory of personality that is given by the two great psychologists, Dollard and Miller. See, this is the pic of John Dollard and Neil Miller. Whenever we talk about Dollard and Miller, their names come together. We say Dollard and Miller, not individually Dollard and Miller, because they get together and gave together the learning theory. They combined the psychology of learning with other aspects of psychoanalytic theory. John Dollard and Neil Miller in 1950 in the Institute of Human Relations at Yale University put forward their theory of personality. In this theory, they tried to substitute Freud's concept of a pleasure principle. Basically, they were against the Freud's concept of pleasure, not these two psychologists only, the other contemporary, the other like the Adler and Jung, who were the disciples of great psychologist Freud. Later on, when they developed their psychology, they also put forward different ideas, and they do not they were not agreeing to the pleasure theory or the other aspects which were given by the hedonism, and the other aspects which were given by Freud. They were not agreeing to it. So Dollard and Miller, they were also opposing this idea of pleasure theory of given by the Freud. They were against it, and they changed the pleasure principle with the reinforcement. They say that this is not pleasure principle, rather the importance of reinforcement principle is there, and they change the concept of ego with the concept of learned drive and learning skills. They said that the concept of ego must be changed with the concept of drive and concept of skills, and the concept of conflict with the competing reinforces. Meaning by the Dollard and Miller, they gave the learning theory of personality, and they said that the past experience only or the unconscious behavior only is not the important, rather they were also talking about the present experiences. This theory described the development of personality from simple drive to complex function from a learning theory stage. It emphasized that what we consider personality is learned. See, the other psychologists like Freud, they were saying that the personality is developed in the childhood, and there are the instincts or impulses within the individual, or the biological aspects or the hereditary aspects which make the personality of the individual. But Dollard and Miller, they say when after interacting in the society, and when we learn and when we get education and when we increase our knowledge and education, our experiences, when we learn so many things, on the basis of learning our personality changes. It emphasizes what we consider personality is learning. The child at birth is equipped with two types of basic faculties, that is reflexes and innate hierarchies of responses, and a set of primary drives which are internal stimuli of great strength and are linked with known physiological process which impel him to action. Meaning by Dollard and Miller, they wanted to say that these are the experiences which we gain in our society on the basis of learning. Again, we can quote the great psychologist of earlier when we talk about the humanistic approach and phenomenological approach. In phenomenological approach, Maslow said that it depends which style of life we choose. This style of life determines our personality. In the same manner, what are the experiences which we gain in our society when we interact with the different people? What are the books, what is the literature we go through, what we read, and how we perceive, that is also important. Carl Rogers, earlier to it I was talking that Carl Rogers said that how do we perceive the things is really important, because it is our attitude, it is our perception, and on the basis of perception, how do we structure and restructure and reorganize our learning experiences? And that is what Dollard and Miller wanted to say, that on the basis of our learning, we can restructure our personality, we can restructure our experiences. Day to day, in day-to-day life, we are gaining experiences by moment, we are changing, we are getting experiences. Obviously or outwardly, we do not realize how we are changing, but moment we are changing, because we are learning new things, and these new learned aspects, they make our personality. So the child at birth have two experiences: primary drives, which are internal stimuli, and these experiences or these stimuli, they impel one individual to take action. See, impelled by drives, both conditioned and unconditioned. Earlier to it, we have been discussing the conditioned response given by Pavlov. How do we condition the individual, and how do we by unconditioning we learn the things, and we just make conditioning in the class. Suppose we want that all of our students have good communication skill, and so if one child does very well, perform very well, when we appreciate that child, it means it is a conditioning for that particular child, and the other children in the class, other students in the class will be motivated. Such kind of conditioning and unconditioned experiences, they force an individual to learn. One acquire responses to the extent that they reduce the drive, because drive reduction is, again we have discussed in other learning theories previous to it, that drive reduction is important. Drive reduction results in reinforcement. So this drive reductions, suppose one is thirsty, when one gets water, that's drive for that water. When water is given to that individual, that drive is reduced. So that reinforcement or rewards, which in turn may give birth to many other drives or motives and impel the individual to learn new responses and new behavior patterns. Again, I refer to the learning theory given by Pavlov. When for a long time individual is not getting that reward or reinforcement, or for which there is a drive, then what happens? Then unconditioning or also takes place, because one comes to know that I am not going to get this thing, then that conditioning turns into unconditioning. Aristotle, I will also quote here the great educationist and a thinker Aristotle. Aristotle also has said what happens when one individual is not getting a thing which he or she desires for a longer time. What happens after a long time when one is not getting, one tries to make adjustment, and one develops a habit to live without that thing, because that is the last option only for that individual. So that is the conditioned and unconditioned response. And new behavior patterns takes place because individual learn to make adjustments in the society and learn new responses, and these new responses, when one learns in the society by going through the books, going through the education or the media or the teachers or the parents or the peer group, one learns, and the behavior pattern of the individual changes. So this change in the behavior patterns makes the personality of the individual. That is why I am talking to you that moment by moment the changes come in the individual by the experiences he or she gains in the society. Outwardly, one does not come to know how I am changing, where I am changing, but the changes are come, and sometimes most of these changes are for the positive betterment of the individual, because for making adjustments in the society, one has to adopt the changes, one has to move with the time. See, since our social environment is a major source of reinforcement, how do we get reinforcement? This reinforcement majorly we get from the social environment. It plays a key role in creating new drives and motives, our learning new responses, and consequently developing our personality. The responses and behavior learned through the process of motivation and reward are important in personality development. Due importance is also given to habit formation, and habits are formed by SR connections through learning. What is this SR? Already we have discussed much in the learning theory. This SR, S means stimulus and R means response. Now, as strong the stimulus and as strong will be the response. So stimulus also makes our personality strong. So what kind of response an individual is giving, that most of the time depends on the stimulus. So teachers and parents and the other stakeholders have to realize that stimulus must be great. Later on I will be talking to you, sometime when the reward is delayed, then the effect of that reward or reinforcement is no more, because individual is having a tendency, when one child or when any individual has performed well and you say that you will get reward, that reward should be given immediately, because it is said and it is considered that the delayed reward have no effect. Then as one's fund of learning grows on the basis of experiences and interaction with one's environment, one's habits are reorganized, new habits are learned, and consequently one's personality is modified and developed in terms of learning new behavior and picking up new threads or styles of life. See, I would like to elaborate this idea of habit formation given by Dollard and Miller, because habit formation is really very important, because one has to make the habit strong, because these are our new experiences which teaches us, and in this teaching, in this learning process, one has to acquire new habits, and this is to be realized by the teachers also, that this is our duty, that how to convert the habit of the students. Suppose we realize that this habit of the youngster is not good, and we want that the another good habit which is desirable must be formed among the youngsters, then we have to make habit, because changes in the habit can come. So this habit formation consequently, when adopted by the individual, makes the personality and modifies the personality and develop in terms of learning new behavior and picking up new threads and new styles of life. That is what I was speaking to you earlier few minutes back, that we have to be ready to change to the positive nature, positive adjustment, because to bring the changes, to bring the adjustment, we have to accordingly be ready to adopt the new styles of life. We have to bind up ourselves with the new threads, new styles, and on the same lines we have to guide our youngster, we have to guide our students and children that you have to pick up the new habits to learn. So this is the learning theory given by Dollard and Miller, that one has to learn new things, new habits, so that personality is developed. That's why he was against the idea of given by the great psychologist Freud that the experiences or the personality is formed on the basis of experiences which one has acquired in the childhood. Those acquired experiences in the childhood can be changed by changing the habits, by giving the good training to the child. So this is really essential to know on the part of the individual child also, that those, if some experiences are bitter gained in the childhood, they can be changed by changing the habits, by changing the experiences, by giving good experiences. Those bitter experiences of the childhood can be changed and personality can be formed in a dignified and required manner. According to Dollar and Miller, there are 4 fundamental factors in the process of learning: drive by motivation, cue by stimulus, response by action, and reinforcement by reward. See, what is drive? It is any stimulus which initiates or impels action on the part of the organism. Drives differ in their strength of activating behavior. The stronger the drive, the more vigorous will be the behavior. See, it depends to whom we are giving. Drives differ and they have different influence from person to person. So one while giving those reward and responses, one has to see to whom we are giving, because one drive will be effective for another person and may be less effective for another person. What is cue? A cue is a stimulus that guides the response of the organism by directing or determining exact nature of response. These cues are basic, which can be internal or external. Learning ability of an individual depends on the perception of the distinctive characteristics of cues. Response: drive state created by physiological needs impels the organism for action. Action is response, which is basic for learning. The production of appropriate response is a crucial stage in learning. If the organism makes no action, no learning will take place. And the fourth is the reinforcement. It is an important ingredient in the process of establishing SR habits. Reinforcement takes place in the presence of a drive. Immediate reinforcement after the response is more effective than delayed reinforcement. See, this is the picture of Albert Bandura. In brief, I'll also mention the social learning theory of Albert Bandura and Walter's social learning theory. As the name of Dollard and Miller comes together, the name of Bandura and Walters, they come together. They gave the social learning theory. Albert Bandura and Richard Walters in 1963 came out with an innovative approach to personality in the form of their social learning theory. They advanced the view that what an individual presents to the world at large at his personality is acquired through a continuous process of structuring and restructuring of experiences gathered by means of social learning and later imitated in corresponding situations. Social learning may involve real as well as symbolic models. See, this is the pic of Walters, two great psychologists. Children, for example, pick up etiquette and attitude by watching their parents and elders from media. See, I would elaborate on this point when Walters and Bandura long back has said that children pick up etiquettes and attitudes by watching parents. So, this is my message to the parents and the elders that be careful. When you become parents, you have to be careful that your behavior and your attitude is being copied and imitated by your children. So you have to show your ideal side because you are the model for the children. The imitation is further reinforced in their actions. An individual thus acquires numerous traits and modes of behavior from many sources, and all these together contribute to the formation and development of his or her unique personality. Now, we'll talk later in detail about the social learning theory. For today, I have just mentioned that after learning theory, there is social learning theory given by Bandura and Walters. We'll talk in detail later on in the next series. I would like to talk about the learning theories and social learning theory. Let me just conclude that in learning theory, the Dollard and Miller, they wanted to say that these are our experiences and these are our knowledge or education or the experiences which we learn or which we gain in the society when we interact with the people. So this is not the childhood experiences which make our personality. Rather, on the basis of learning acquired in the society, we can make personality. So this is my message on the basis of the theory given by Dollard and Miller, that individual child individually has to realize that one can make his personality by learning the present experiences. And on the basis of social learning theory, which we'll discuss in detail later on, Bandura and Walters, they were of the viewpoint that children learn by observing the media persons or the other stakeholders or the adults are the parents and the teachers. So we have to be, as adult person, we have to be careful that our behavior is being imitated by the children. Let me conclude about all the theories of personality. The trait approach emphasizes on the basic traits, and on the other hand, type approach classifies people into definite types based on distinct personality traits. This psychoanalytical approach emphasizes the unconscious motives and considers the nature of the human being to be basically animal nature. And on this aspect given by the great psychologist Freud, he was criticized by his contemporary psychologists and even by his pupils Adler and Jung, who were associated very much with the Freud. But when it was established by Freud that there is the animal nature in the human being and he is all the time after the pleasure principles, he was criticized. So after that, the humanistic approach which we have discussed today, given by the great psychologist Maslow, and the self theory by the Roger, that there is not always they says that there is the evil or devil nature human being, rather there is a good and neutral impulses in the individual and underlines the finer values of the human beings. There are the finer values. No one wants to become bad. These are our experiences or the pressures of the society which make one individual bad. No one is born bad. So there are the good impulses in every human being and attaches maximum importance to the contents of consciousness. The social learning approach gives no credence to heredity cum biological basis of a person's personality for determining his behavior or personality. No biological aspect, rather what we interact, what we say, what we learn, what we perform, what we do, what is our attitude in the society, that is important, which makes our personality. And all the viewpoints expressed, however, irrespective of their outward differences, should not be viewed as entirely independent of each other, as all of them try to explain the nature, structure and functioning of personality and behavior in their own way, because all were trying to understand the personality in a different manner. So they were not opposed to each other, rather their approaches were different. If I say that Dollard and Miller or the Maslow and Roger were against the Freud, it means they were not against the Freud, rather the approach which was adopted by Freud, they were not agreeing to it. So they were not entirely independent, somehow they were influencing each other. So they were having different ideas and all were trying to understand the personality, how visionary they were in the long back, because the ideas and contribution given by all the psychologists is really helping us out to make the personality of the individual. As a teacher, educator, as a counselor, as a parents, really we are getting help from these psychologists, how they try to understand the personality. And with this note, well, I believe that it will be really helpful for all the listeners and viewers, that how can we understand the personality by understanding or by just knowing the approaches given by the great psychologists which we have discussed today, that is Abraham Maslow, Carl Rogers, Dollard and Miller, and Bandura and Walter I have just mentioned. We will be talking in detail. So I hope I am clear to all of you, and it will be really helpful for all the learners in the area of psychology, and for the for the parents and for the teachers also. With this note, I am really thankful to you.
And we would like to thank Dr. Parveen Sharma for giving us an insightful lecture on personality theory, and especially we have approach towards humanistic approach as well as phenomenological approach. Ma'am, we have discussed how the environment, how the society, how the people around us develops the personality of an individual. We have also seen that when a child commits a mistake, and with the help of that mistake, the person or the child grows up. So should we let our children to do mistakes so that they could develop a better personality?
No, we have to guide the student that this is wrong and this is right, but for that we have to adopt a positive approach. We should not think of punishing the children, rather we have to tell what is right and what is wrong, because underlying the human nature there lies the human fine values. So we have to draw that fine values from the individual.
Definitely, we should definitely help out the students who sometimes go under the pressure. So we have to work out so that they work in a free environment. Dear friends, we believe that this lecture appeared to be beneficial to you. If you have any queries, do write to us at info.cec@nic.in. If you have any suggestions also, then your suggestions are welcome. And if you want to have a session on particular theory or particular topic, then please do write to us. The lecture is going to be uploaded on YouTube very soon. So keep watching us and keep writing us. We would be meeting again soon. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Vidya ji. Thank you, listeners and viewers.